Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Throughout today's event, you will also have the opportunity to win one of several prizes. So be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules tab of the interface to see how you can earn points. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Blake Penn, Chief Information Security Officer, Colgate University. We're super excited to have Blake and our panelists for a panel discussion titled AI Governance and Security Risk. Welcome, Blake. Over to you.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Nick. We have a great panel here today. We have a great discussion topic around AI governance and security risk. I'm sure you're all very interested in this topic. It's very timely, and we'll have a great discussion here and then leave some time at the end for everyone who's attending to give us some questions, and we'll be glad to answer those questions as well. So really look forward to the discussion, look forward to your questions as well. So I guess without further ado, I would like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start us off with our initial question. So I'll start off with David. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Dave Williamson. I'm the CIO at Abzena. We are a contract development and manufacturing organization for the biotech industry. I've spent my career in life sciences, and thanking everyone for joining, and great to be a part of the panel.
Thanks, David. And now over to you, Scott.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Lashway. I'm a partner at the law firm of Mintz. I'm in Boston, and I co-chair our cybersecurity and data privacy practice. My bend on this topic is from that bias.
Oh, sounds good, Scott. Thanks so much. And finally to you, Paula.
Hi, my name is Paula Crowell. I'm the CIO for LA County Sanitation Districts. Our mission is to convert waste into resources. So we handle several wastewater treatment facilities and all of the infrastructure, as well as solid waste, recycling and turning that into energy.
Thanks so much. So I'll take everybody in the same order for a first question to keep it simple, and then we'll start mixing it up a little bit. So David, I'll start with the first question. The first question is a very big high level one. So and it's what do you think is the biggest area of AI security risk that we have for today's IT leadership?
Sure. So thank you. I think the biggest risk around AI is exposing your data, your intellectual property, confidential data. We've already seen incidents in the news where people have had source code exposed. Their competitors or other parties have been able to get a hold of that. So ensuring that you have the right controls in place and such to secure your data that you are using with AI, I think is critically important.
Yeah, that sounds a great point. Do you have some examples of those sort of incidents, like what sort of things happened in those particular incidents?
Sure. So I believe one was with Samsung, where they were using a public AI bot to debug software that code for their mobile devices. So the solution to that is to set up your own private AI instance rather than using the public ones. But as IT leaders, we know the users sometimes go and do things thinking with best intents. So instead of waiting for that to happen, us being proactive and providing a solution and a method to utilize the solution is the best path.
Yeah. So yeah, in this case, you're taking something like source code. You're not thinking about it. You're inadvertently putting it up and to a third party that you have no control over, and that is breaching the confidentiality of your information. Yeah, that's a very dangerous thing, and seeing several incidents like that occur. So it's a great point. So I'll take the same question to you now, Scott. What do you think are the biggest areas of AI security risk for today's and I'll even broaden the question, not only IT leadership, but the organizational leadership as well.
Yeah, so I spend probably most of my time on the topic that David just raised, but I think going a little bit more high level, one of the most significant risks we see is just a misunderstanding of AI technology, both from technology leadership, from security, as well as maybe from the business or operations leaders. And what I mean by that is, AI is a thing, right? And it's changed pretty dramatically recently, and it's really kind of gotten out to us consumers, and it's very available. But understanding what that technology is and what it can do and how we can use it, I think is a real challenge these days to keep a pace with the technology development as well as what individuals want to use it for. And I think that misunderstanding or complexity with trying to understand what the AI is and what are we going to use it for is presenting a lot of security risks to organizations.
Oh, that's a great point, Scott. It's the educational aspect. Yeah. Do you have any ideas or strategies of how to bridge that kind of education gap that we have in AI today?
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this from a governance perspective during today's discussion. But one of the things that we're kind of constantly challenged by is this part of the organization wants to use this new AI tool, and as a lawyer, what do you think of that? And we're trying to reinvent the wheel a bit in that conversation because our fallback is, well, do you have a vendor management program? Do you have a software development lifecycle program? Like, what tools are you already using to evaluate new technologies in your environment? Can we use those processes? Maybe we need to expand them or adjust them a little bit. But that's the general approach that we've been seeing successful companies use to try to understand what the AI actually is and how it's going to be used.
Oh, that's a great strategy. So thanks for that. And Paula, what are your thoughts on the biggest area of AI security risk is today for today's organization and for today's IT leadership as well?
Yeah, coming from critical infrastructure, I'm constantly getting emails from Department of Homeland Security about threats and attacks. And I think somewhat to what Scott was saying, AI is everywhere at once, and there are so many different paths. So one of the things that I've tried to do is figure out, like David said, how we can have our own private internal AI. But that doesn't stop, just like Scott said, well-intended employees from wanting more capability than what my internal AI might be able to provide them. And I think I'm in meetings about once a week with vendors telling people AI can solve this complex business problem, right? And so what I typically say is, let's define what we're talking about. Are we talking about true AI? Are we talking about machine learning? Are we talking about statistical analysis to determine trends? And so many times the users aren't clued into that nuance, right? So like Scott's saying, education is a really big point to getting AI to be able to be part of your organization.
Yeah, those are great points. And yeah, AI is definitely one of those technologies, one of those topics that we've seen in the hype cycle, right? As we've seen other things as well. But it's a real thing too. So there's a tremendous amount of progress in AI today and adoption even, and people using it for very useful things. But when you have a confluence of those two things, a huge hype cycle for a particular technology like that, and it's not just vaporware, it's actually happening, then it becomes extra important to pull apart the myth from the reality, right? So those are fantastic points y'all had. So I'll move to the kind of next question here. So we'll start with Scott here, who kind of brought it up. already. So how has AI changed the way that organizations manage governance? And I guess two-part question. How can organizations create policies that everybody can understand and follow that relate to AI?
Yeah, and so these are two really big topics, and maybe I'll start with the first one. So how has AI changed the way organizations manage this risk? So, historically, if you're an employee of a company, the technology that was made available to you was something that came from the organization. So you'd look to the technology group or the IT group to say, okay, what are the applications I should use? Where's my laptop when I show up for work the first day? With AI, especially some of the more consumer-friendly generative AI, that technology now really is in the hands of the user or the employee, who can go out and get it themselves, or maybe even it's a feature on a company-approved application, and there might be a guardrail to say you're not supposed to use this. Right? It's right there in the app. You can use the AI button. And so I think one thing that organizations are having to do is to really take a broader view on what this risk is and how do we actually manage it. So we can't just look to the IT group anymore to say, well, you're solely responsible for managing the technology that we use at the organization. And that's a conversation we've been having about security now for years. But another example is sometimes people look to lawyers to help manage that risk. And, we've had folks say to us, well, there's no such thing as an AI lawyer. It's brand new. And we say, no, it's not brand new. It's been around for decades. And so we need to understand kind of what experience comes from law that can help us manage this risk. And so just to speak to that for a second, since that's my bias on this discussion, the things that we look for are privacy. So can we use the data? Do we own the data that wants to be put in? What are the implications for using the data? It's not just personal information, but it's also proprietary information. Security, things like David mentioned about code and other proprietary technology, ownership rights that we don't want to expose to a third party who may be unknown to us. We look at intellectual property for, again, ownership rights, and are we helping someone else build technology? Do we have ownership rights in that? So those are three areas that we're looking for from law to help from a control function perspective. But we do need to get the broader organization engaged in what AI do we want to use, what's its value, and how can we use it.
Yeah, those are great points, and there's obviously a lot to the governance aspect of this for sure. And I've kind of reminded of the shadow IT issue here that IT has been talking about for a couple decades now. That once these things become everything is on the web and everything's a service, then users can just go directly. Yeah, and kind of go around the central IT functions and governance structures. So bringing that into the AI world is a really important concept. So I'll ask Paulo, what do you think about the governance challenges and how AI is changing that from your perspective?
Yeah, I agree with Scott a lot about the conundrum that we're in on who's supposed to decide what your compliance structure is or what controls you have. Is it legal? Is it IT? Is it a different business unit who wants to use the technology? And I think that I tell myself a lot of times, IT cannot be an ostrich. We can't stick our head in the sand and say it's a security risk, don't use it. If we do, the trends show that the users will find a way, right? And that's where we get into trouble with compliance. And so I really think that IT and legal for organizations need to take a very forward lean into AI and come up with processes and policies, controls that align with the organization to help the organization leverage all of the wealth that AI can bring to the organization. But I think it has to be a joint effort, especially with executive management. I really think AI is like the internet. I'm old enough to remember when businesses were getting the internet everywhere, and Netscape Navigator was the thing, and people were all freaked out about it. I remember people telling me, "I don't want a website. I don't think that's a real thing." I think we're in the same space right now with AI. I think AI is the internet of this generation, and we have to quickly get our hands around it and set up policies and controls that help keep everyone safe.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy, Bella, and perhaps a lesson we can learn from history as well, that we didn't put a lot of governance in place with the early internet or World Wide Web. We kind of made a conscious decision to kind of let it be ungoverned, and we've reaped the consequences of that. Some have been positive, certainly as far as the innovation speed and stuff, but also with privacy and security concerns and these sort of things. I think maybe we could have done a better job, a little more governance there. So I'll turn it to you, David. What do you think about this topic? Do you kind of agree with what the others are saying? Do you have other perspectives on the governance question with AI?
Well, certainly agree with the comments that the other panelists raised. I think one of these is back to the sort of the basics of IT. What is the business objective we're trying to use AI for? So Paula mentioned you get vendors in, everything's AI enabled today. What exactly are we trying to do with the tech? And how could you achieve this? It like any technology, there's work involved in understanding it, understanding how to make it work well. There's another area you can find examples of where AI gives very good answers and then gives often poor answers. So having a structure, a project around it, a problem to solve with the right group of team members is often the best approach, regardless of whether it's AI or a different technology.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's a very practical perspective, and then that kind of helps round out what we've been talking about here in governance. I appreciate that. So let's switch to the next question here. I'm going to ask this starting with Paula. What are the top challenges related to quantifying AI-related security risks that you see in your environment?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't fully understand AI. And I think as we see sometime Microsoft and ChatGPT having difficulty explaining some of the things that AI comes with, I'm not alone in not understanding it. And I think the key to creating controls is by understanding where the risks lie. And I was just having a conversation with a colleague of mine about risk control, risk mitigation, and risk management. If you don't fully understand the risk, how can you create mitigation? And to me, that's probably the biggest struggle, is that any security controls that we put in place have to be living documents. And we're going to have to accept that they're going to have to evolve over time. And that's typically difficult for things like a security control stack, right? The teams who are implementing these controls typically want to be able to set it and forget it and sleep well at night saying, I implemented the control, risk mitigated, go me. And so that's not going to necessarily happen with this framework. And I think this puts us in a little bit of uncharted territory.
Yeah, those are great points, Paula. So David, what would you say about the challenges related to quantifying AI security risk?
Sure. So again, Paula's comments are spot on. It's difficult to understand what the users are trying to use the technology for. I can see that you're accessing the technology, but I don't know what you're doing to it. I don't know what data you're feeding it. So building in this touch points with your different user groups, we're trying to proactively work with them to understand what they're doing. I think that's one of the best ways to mitigate the risk, is to try to understand what are they doing, so you can better quantify the risks. But it is a challenge, and she's spot on with, it's not do it once and forget about it. It's a continual touch point.
Yeah, good points. And Scott, do you have anything to add on the AI-related security risks and how to best quantify these risks?
Yeah. So again, as a lawyer, outside lawyer to many companies, we were asked this question often, especially just about technology risk in general and what is it worth, and so we can make a decision around whether we should use it or not. at times you can quantify AI related security risks and it can be somewhat straightforward. So an example is like in the IT space. So if you don't own the inputs and then you don't own the output potentially, what is the security risk around that, or what is the monetary or business risk around that? You can start putting, ranges. I think it's worth $5 or it's worth $7.50. But otherwise, I think unless you can really qualify the risk to say, and this is the point I think partly David and Paula were making, is like, if you can't explain here is the actual risk to us as an organization for using this AI, it's going to be almost impossible to say here's how much that risk is going to cost us.
Yeah. Great point. And I think that quantification of security risk in general is hard, right? We've struggled with that a long time. I've used things like FAIR and other sort of things that try to do that. But I think with AI, we have less information so far about the particular security risk, so it's fairly new. So it's even harder than most security or privacy risks, I would say. So
yeah, and maybe just to add something else onto that. So a lot of our focus is sometimes on contracting, which is also trying to mitigate the quantification of the security risk. And what I think you generally see is those who are offering AI related products are not assuming responsibility, whether it be from a limitations of liability or indemnification. So that tells you or reminds you of how difficult it is to quantify this risk as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on, we'll go back to David for the next question. What sort of strategy and technology gaps do you think that make it hard to comply with AI governance policies across an enterprise? So gaps that are strategic, or gaps that are technological, that make it more difficult for everyone to comply with AI policies.
Well, we've touched upon many of the points previously in the discussion. So having the controls in place at a global level as to what data AI you could use with the AI solution, who can interact with it. So that there's a lot of points like that create risk because they're difficult to control. And as we've discussed here, if the tool's out there and I don't need to go to ID to access the tool, I can go to another vendor. That I think is one of the largest sort of strategic risks, is that I know accessibility is high to it. Then I think in technology wise, is we've mentioned, it's evolving quickly, and it's difficult to stay on top of that and understand exactly how it's working, because it's improved, changed. The methodologies or algorithms that are being used evolve. The full truly understanding that can be quite a challenge.
Yeah, good point. And Scott, can you think of strategic or technology gaps that would preclude people, make it difficult for people to adhere to AI governance policies and governance?
Yeah, well, one of the technology gaps is visibility, depending on how you're configured and what your organization looks like, is just visibility into your users' behavior, right? So it's kind of the same type of technology gap that we had when the user would go home and print things from their home printer. And we've had to confront these issues, whether they be significant or insignificant. But there is definitely a technology gap into visibility of the end user and what they're doing, not only with our computing device, the laptop they carry home, but all the information they have available to them. From a strategy perspective, I think we're going to talk about this maybe next, but I think just generally the understanding of AI within most organizations is extremely low. And even those who might claim to be AI experts it's still not where it needs to be to truly inform the organization of how to use the technology safely. And so finding that expertise, in our experience, is very difficult in the market. There's lots of consultants selling it, but it is hard to find real expertise that can help you right now.
Yeah, good point. And Paula, do you see these similar strategy and technology gaps or
Yeah,
additional ones?
I'm going to focus more on the strategy piece because a lot of times IT is tasked to solve human problems. Users have bad behavior, IT builds something to stop it, right? That's why a lot of us have reverse proxies so that we control where they go on the internet, we control what sites they visit from our endpoints, those kind of things. That's not really an IT problem, right? That's a people problem. And so in AI, I see the same kinds of problems. AI is being heavily marketed directly to our users as basically something consumer ready. You don't need IT for this, and it makes your life easy. So when IT tries to step in with legal or however your organization defines it, it becomes almost a burden to the users. And not as IT and legal trying to protect the entity and the users, but almost as a speed bump or a roadblock to innovation. And so I think that's where a lot of us tech and legal people need to spend some time on crafting some language around that so that we can help with the gaps. Because I don't think they're all technical. I think a large portion are user and OCM related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paula, about the non-technical issues, the human issues. And having said that, I'm going to switch to the more positive side of this now and ask Scott to say, have you seen any examples of like innovations where you can create AI governance policies that allow innovation to continue, but still keep all the stakeholders safe?
Yeah, so one thing we've been asked by clients to participate in for some time now is creating kind of AI governance policies. So how is it used, and how is new AI tested and developed and deployed? One of the things that we've encouraged clients to do is, and this happens a lot, you'll get a part of the organization that says, I really need to use this tool and it's publicly available and here's what it is. And so what we've been encouraging organizations to think about is anytime you're going to invest in something new, whether the technology is free or whether it comes with great expense, you are investing in that, right? So if you're going to use that for part of your operations, you're going to rely on it. That is an investment. We've been telling clients, we'll make them do a proof of concept. So if you're telling me that this is going to greatly improve whatever it is you do, let's watch it in real time. So let's put it in a sandbox, let's put some controls around it, and I want you to prove to us why you need this technology, and then we can start helping construct with you, the users, this goes to Paula's last point, how we can safely use that technology in our environment and for our business needs. It is absolutely a speed bump or maybe more, and we hear people squawk, that's not the way this is supposed to work. But we are also supposed to care for our organization and its assets. And I think this is something that to me is just logical.
Yeah, those are great points. How about you, David? What do you think about some innovations that can help people, create policies that people can adhere to and keep them safe without stifling innovation?
Yeah, building on Scott's proof of concept, that interacting with any new technology increases your knowledge of it and your ability then to properly govern and control it, and understanding how you should implement those controls. So that is a fantastic way to help. What I might add to that is not just necessarily doing one proof of concept, but with different parts of the business. So you're engaging a broader set of users, because the users in supply chain may have different ideas than the users in quality control. So to Paula's comment on it, a lot of this is a people problem. So the more people you can engage in this, the more you'll uncover in your investigations. And then as we almost started the whole panel with, if you're not engaging with people, they're going to find some way to be touching the technology. So it's better with us than without us.
Yeah, great point. And I'll then turn it over to you, Paula. Do you have any other thoughts on this? How to make these effective sort of governance policies for AI that allow innovation but keep people safe at the same time?
So some of this is not new. Again, right? We've seen innovative technology come to our organizations before, and so one of the things that I lean on is creating cross-functional stakeholder groups to decide how we're going to adopt new technology. And it has a big focus on education on the technology, making them aware of the risk. And because it's cross-functional, that helps limit some of these groups from breaking off, because every unit in the business is part of this team. And we are driving together what the governance and controls look like. So it's my job to help educate, it's legal's job to help warn, but then it's the other cross-functional groups to tell us what their business needs are. And I'm seeing some positive results around that. We're all adults, we all want our own sense of agency. And when we bring people in these groups to help develop it, it's not like IT said or legal said, right? It's this group of all of us understand the risk of this, and this is what we're comfortable with together. I'm not Pollyanna, I don't think it works all the time, but at least right now, it's helping keep everyone invested.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll go to our last question, and I'll make this one quick for everyone. Just a quick answer for these, maybe like a minute or so. And that way we can take some questions from our audience. So I'll stay with you, Paula. What do you think is next in AI governance, and where should CIOs and other leaders be focusing their efforts on AI?
Paula, your microphone.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting audio here.
Sorry about that. I'm saying the first thing is to build it, right? To start somewhere with some baseline of governance and make sure that your organization understands that these policies and this framework is going to evolve over time. And then hopefully 10 years from now, we're not even talking about this anymore, right? It's just blended seamlessly into the tech stack.
Yeah, that's great. And you, David, where do you think AI is going next, and what we need to focus on?
Well, it's probably a shorter list where it's not going. I think it will be, as Paul was attributing, interwoven in most everything. It really drives a level of efficiency, especially around mundane tasks. And I think her answer is excellent. It's going to happen, embrace it, work with it, and it's going to grow and stretch in ways that we can't imagine at the moment. But let that innovation occur.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. And Scott, I'll leave the last comment to you. So.
Yeah, and Paul, I think was spot on here, but just to take a different angle to the question, I think budget for AI development is something that's going to help guide where companies are going to be successful. So we continue to see companies to, want free technology, and with free technology comes often risk that is either difficult to quantify or qualify, like we spoke. So if you truly need, state-of-the-art AI in your organization, then I think you're going to have to start budgeting for that. With that comes a whole process at most organizations. And so that's where we see kind of the next driving force around AI governance at most organizations.
Yeah, great point. So we'll jump into the questions now. I'll let this be a little more chaotic. Anybody can jump in on these, so I don't have to call you. And you can talk amongst each other and myself. But I see a good one. Here. If there's a good one to start with, if anybody wants to jump in here. So one of our participants is asking, what do you see as the biggest challenges for CIOs in establishing and maintaining a robust AI governance framework? And I'll stop just a second with that question and say, maybe you should just put CIOs, because that kind of says that, oh, well, CIOs are in charge of doing that, which it may have a hand in, but I think it's much broader than that. So I would say, what do you see as the biggest challenges for executives, leaders, including CIOs, in establishing and maintaining a robust AI governance framework?
I think we kind of talked about a lot of those, right? Is the CIO the right person? That would be my first question, right? Is the CIO the right person to have that kind of burden to establish that sort of framework, right? Most CIOs have a lot of other jobs too, and AI is a newer technology. The CIO just might not be the right subject matter expert to lead that. So I would, again, kind of lead people back to creating a user group internally in your organization, bringing in external resources from either the educational community who's been doing a lot, reach out to like one of your local universities. There's a great wealth of knowledge coming out of the universities on AI, and they can help inform your stakeholder group to drive what that framework looks like for you. I think it really has to be individual to each organization. It's not going to be one where I think we can copy and paste from my friend David.
True. I don't think there's one leader in the organization who could shoulder the responsibility for that. It needs to be managed and probably at this time managed at the executive level, where the executive leadership team is discussing these issues and supporting each other in how the technology is being deployed and used.
Yeah, good point. And yeah, I think it's I think we have these common themes that we keep running across of having this like multi-stakeholder participation and stuff like that, right? So it's not just a tech issue, it's a human issue and an organizational issue and a governance issue. So there's the techies and the tech leadership, which a lot of us are in, of course, play a big part of that, but not the only part. If we try to run it as a pure technical thing, I think we could be leaving some critical stakeholders out and could run into some problems there. So here's a really interesting question. So this could take up some time because it's very open-ended. So feel free to chime in here. One of our participants is asking, where do you see AI and AI security risks 10 years from now?
I'm going to ask ChatGPT real quick, and I'll talk to you guys.
Yeah, and while you guys are thinking about that as well, yeah, I would say that as fast as we've seen this particular type of generative AI kind of essentially kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, it's always been developing, but seeing its capabilities increase drastically just in the past number of years. This wasn't 5-10 years ago. This was just the last few years. This has been accelerating to the pace where I'm not sure anybody knows where it's going from 10 years from now. To be honest with you, I do kind of see, going through my technology career and my background, though, that I would say, like, right now we're focused on things like are people going to put our organizational data in these things, so we lose control of it, and then somebody else queries it and gets that data, sort of thing, or just the third party has it. We really don't want them to have that. And it kind of starts off with those low level things, but I think in the future, as AI capacity increases, it may be doing a lot more than just the strict data, reformatting things or kind of being inventive with language things, and maybe driving processes and stuff like that. In which case, we may have risks of we've outsourced essentially business processes to AI, not just data. And I think we'll see, like we've seen in security and privacy and these sort of disciplines over the years. Personally, I think we'll just see those risks shift over time as the use of AI broadens in different things. So that's kind of my offhand spin to that question, and I'd love to hear what our panelists think about it.
So
yeah, I think you're correct, Blake. As the usage will expand, the understanding how you're using it. So in your case of where it's running a business process, your ability to thoroughly vet and test that is limited. You only have so many resources. So having the controls in place to understand when and how AI is being used is working, so you can intervene is needed. And some of that checks and balances will be driven by AI itself, where we'll have tools, for instance, to protect us from a cybersecurity perspective, while other third parties will be using it to try to break in. So it is difficult to guess how things would be in 10 years, but it will definitely be a pervasive technology.
So, Blake, I was going to say something similar to what David said, but a little bit different is that right now we have cybersecurity testing and frameworks. We teach users about phishing, things like that. And I think that AI is going to make it hard for us to understand what is real. And to me, that's probably one of the biggest kind of security risks is being able to vet what is a threat versus a human versus a bot, right? Even in like the e-commerce space, we see these bots have now, overwhelmed ticketing systems because they're just taking up all of the resources. And I see that AI has that same potential if there's not some sort of common understanding and regulation. So one hope I have is that there will be some level of regulation around AI, because if we don't have an anchor to truth, that makes it very hard for everything. How can we trust the data coming out of AI? How can we make business decisions on something if we don't have that anchor? So I'm really hopeful that there's going to be some regulation coming soon that at least can identify when something was created or edited heavily by AI, so that us as mere humans, mere mortals, have a fighting chance at this.
And that's, Scott, I'll let you weigh on this as well if you have any additional thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to maybe give some illustrations of Paula's comment that AI has become already very difficult to detect, and so we've seen instances where companies have hired AI generated bots who were interviewing for jobs over video chat. They literally hired the person and it turned out to be a bot. We've joked that you have to get the person to turn around and show the back of their head, because that's not what the bot's trained to do. We've seen a number of instances where voice recordings or voice phone calls to customer services have led to fraud at financial institutions because the AI bot is so well developed, including localized accents. And so their speech is almost perfect. You listen to the recording and it sounds like a human being. So the power behind AI, what it can be used for those purposes is astonishing. It's already there and it's only going to get better. So I agree with Paul on that. And from the cyber perspective and defenses and controls, was said earlier, there's not a day that goes by that you can't be paying attention to this and constantly evolving your controls to make sure that you're trying to detect and prevent that kind of fraud as well.
Yeah, it's a great point, and Paula brings up great points about the legislation as well. I think I saw that Colorado was the first state to put some AI legislation out there, and I think we're probably going to see the same if history is any indicator. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening here. We have several other questions we're not going to have time to get to because we need to wrap this up. I guess the one I will leave you with that we don't have time to answer is that somebody asked a question about the kind of the leadership of this as well, like who's best positioned in the organization to lead AI stuff. We can't answer that now. We don't have the time, but I think it's a great thing to think of. Like, we talked about some of the questions said, what does the CIO do? Well, CIO definitely has a role, but you also have a chief AI officer or something like that that's outside of IT that handles things that are ethical and legal and stuff, as well as the technological issues. You have a governance committees, et cetera. These are all great questions, and we'll have plenty to talk about for many years to come on this topic, I'm sure. So I want to thank our panel again, Paula and Scott and David. It's been a great discussion. Been great to discuss this topic with you all, and want to thank everybody for participating. You had great questions, and I hope you learned a lot in this panel discussion. So I'll just give it back to you, Nick.
Great. Well, thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin at 12:25 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a thought leadership titled Have a Conversation with Your Data, Untapping Organizational Knowledge from Your Data with Gen AI. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.